We're well into the season at this point and the leaderboards are finally out. And while they're so far just a beta feature, when combined with the unofficial pit leaderboards, they do give us an overview of what the best builds are this season. And that's what we'll cover in this one. In particular, we'll do the 2 best builds per class. So in case you don't find the rank 1 build fun, then you've got the rank 2 build. And if you don't find that one fun either, then you can go fuck yourself. We'll cover all of the builds briefly, granting you a glimpse of their capabilities, and you'll then find full build guides in the description. Starting us off with the worst class in the game, we have the Edgy Emo. And while this is the weakest class on the leaderboards currently, it's not far off from the other classes. If we just assume for a second that the Paladin doesn't exist, that is LMAO. Alright, so what's going on at the Necro front then? Well, at the number 1 spot, we have Shadowblight, here by OHS. And if the build name didn't give it away, it's a build entirely relying on the Shadowblight key passive. You simply stack a buttload of sources of shadow damage, stack up the Shadowblight key passive, and shit dies. This build has previously been a solid option since Season 9 or so, but never quite reaching the rank 1 position. However, with the nerfs from last season to bonus splinters, and with nerfs I mean complete nuke, the build reached the rank 1 spot. So if you want to push high, definitely play this build. However, if you intend to do anything other than pushing, you may want to look for another build. Because while the Emo is a sloth in nearly all aspects of the game, this build takes it to a whole other level. The next 2 builds, though, does provide some better farming capabilities. The booty-clapping Bloodwave build and the Golem Stonker. Hey Mr. Paragaming from Paragaming, I thought you were only doing 2 builds per class. Yeah, well, I also didn't expect to be farting in front of thousands of viewers. But here we are. And the reason we have 2 builds here is due to the fact that they appear to be identical in power. And first out is the booty-clapping Bloodwave. Sora has been playing this build for half a lifetime at this point, and for good reason. It's likely the most fun Necro build out there, at the least it's my favorite one. It's fast. In terms of Necro builds, that is, it deals a buttload of damage, and it's easy to play. There's also a bunch of ways of playing the build. Generally, you go with the fast blood aspect, pick up a few blood orbs, reset the cooldown of Bloodwave, and repeat. And this may sound clunky, it really is not, seeing as it's easier than ever to get enough cooldown reduction to do this. Combine that with the fact that all of your damage is coming from Bloodwave in itself, and the remaining skills are merely there to buff your Bloodwave, you can play the build as a 1-button build while you're doing something else on your second monitor, like watching Paragaming videos, for example. When it comes to the Golem Stonker, the minion Emo has pretty much always been about the skelly mages, but with the introduction of the Grave Bloom Mace, making the Golem smaller but granting him the power of friendship, along with several buffs to the overall power of minions, the Golem Stonker became an absolute powerhouse. And the main attraction of this build, apart from the fact that it's a great pit pusher, is that it's great at pretty much anything in the game. One-shotting bosses? No problem. Farming? Easy. Being brain dead? Absolutely, it does it all, while also being easy to gear and get online. I can definitely recommend this one as well. Alright, time to check out the next class, the Sorc. But first, a word from today's sponsor, Blizz. Yeah, that's right. You didn't see that one coming, did you? Blizzard just launched a big-ass update for Diablo Immortal, and I gave the game a proper playthrough for the first time in years. And let me tell you, it's come a long way with one of the biggest endgames on the ARPG market, with dungeons, raids, rifts, PvP, and a bunch more. And in this update, the First and Last King, they've added even more, along with concluding the main campaign and the Worldstone Saga, introducing new zones, raid bosses, and a bunch more. And until the 20th, there's a World of Warcraft event running, introducing an Arathi Basin PvP mode, a new legendary gem and World of Warcraft-inspired cosmetics. I can highly recommend giving it a try. Use the link in the description, download it for free, and hop on right now. Even though the Paladin has been insanely fun this season, the Sorc is still my favorite, and for good reason. Just look at this magnificent build. It's Zaramos with his crack Ling energy build. We've actually covered this build on the channel this season, shout out to myself, in case you want a full guide. Now this build in particular has some interesting mechanics, because crackling energy is absolute ass. So somehow, we need to make it good. How is that done? Easy. We're slapping on the Essadora's overflowing cameo. Quite possibly the most build-defining unique in the entire game, it transforms crackling energy from ass to an actual build. For every rank in equipped shock skills, it gains multiplicative damage. And that, my friends, is why you're seeing this odd assortment of skills on the skill bar. Because by doing this, and scaling our shock skill ranks, we're able to get somewhere in the ballpark of 150 skill ranks or something, getting a humongous damage bonus from Essadora's. And when it comes to actually spawning the crackling energies, that's what makes the build fun, because it plays similar to that of a ball lightning build. We're simply spamming as many of them as we possibly can, each spawning crackling energies, along with gaining some additional crack from other sources. Alright, so that's a bit of the basics. There are quite a lot of interactions making this build as good as it can be, but for those, I refer you to the guide. For the next sorcerer build, the jump in power is quite substantial. The biggest jump out of all classes, in fact. But you may like what's sitting at rank number 2 because it's a fan favorite, the Frozen Ore build. Because after being a fairly mid-build in previous seasons, it finally got some much-needed buffs. Its enhancement got giga buffed, its damage got buffed, but most importantly, the Fractured Winter Glass got some substantial changes. Instead of granting you primordial binding ranks, it's now granting Frozen Orb ranks. On top of that, it's now granting a humongous buff to Frozen Orb the more summons you have, well beyond that of what you'd otherwise get from primordial bindings. These buffs in themselves basically propelled the build from mid to actually pretty damn good. Now there may be stronger builds for the source like Blizzard or Hydra, but who the hell knows, since no one's actually playing them. It's literally all about crackling energy this season, but see this as a fun alternative. Alright, next up, we have the third shittiest class in the game, or fifth best one perhaps, the fat wood-chopping man, and the best build by quite the margin seem to be the Pulverizer once again. Okay, and how does this build work then? Well, you press the Pulverize button, shit explode, and you collect loot. It's that simple. Ever since Blizz introduced the Rotting Lightbringer, this build has been topping the Druid leaderboards. It's just such a build-defining unique. It grants you a buttload of willpower, it solves your chance to hit Pulverize twice, it more or less solves resources, it has insane amounts of additive damage, and then the aspect. It not only boosts your damage, but it also guarantees overpower. Pair that with the fact that Pulverize has been getting buffed more or less every season, the later seasons more than others, and after a while the cup not only overfills, but implodes. And what's even better, you can play the build basically all the way from level 1 to the highest of Pits and Tower. So, if you haven't played it yet, you definitely need to, because expect it to get nuked eventually. For the next build, it still feels odd saying this, but it's a companion build at the top yet again. It feels odd because back when I was maining Druid each season, companions were absolute garbage. But consistently for like 4 seasons, they've been a top 3 contender for strongest Druid builds. And this season is no different. Here we have a Wolves companion build, but scaling Ravens is also incredibly strong. Unfortunately a lot weaker than Season 10, but hey, so are most builds. Okay, but why is Companions a strong build? Well, it's all dating back to the fact that Companions inherits all of our buffs and damage. This made Companions decent. But since then, they've been getting buff after buff. Their base damage have been increased. The aspects and uniques have seen substantial buffs. And for the Ravens in particular, they got a new pair of pantaloonies, the Kilt of Blackwing, turning the skill into an actual playable build. Pretty solid. Overall, the companion builds are chill options to play, in case you're tired of playing Pulverize for the 11th season in a row. Heading off to the next class, we have the Rogue. And for the best build, we have the most fun rogue skill in the game, paired with one of the most obnoxious playstyles out of all builds in the game. I'll let you in on a little secret though. It doesn't have to be obnoxious, only if you're pushing the highest of pits and towers. But first things first, why is it obnoxious? Well, that's due to the best weapon out there is simply the Orphan Maker. It grants you a 4x multiplier, on top of granting a 100% damage increase from your additional reload skills. This does come with a pretty substantial downside though. Reloading a skill puts it on a cooldown, meaning your Heartseeker is no longer spammable and less fun to play. Okay, so what do we do in the meantime? That's up to you, really. Take a break, grab a snack, rub one out, or I guess you could use your other skills to boost your next Heartseeker. Okay, but Mr. Big Penis Man, I'd rather sit on my own ballsack than play a build like this. Yeah, I feel you, so drop the weapon then, grab a regular legendary and slap on an aspect on it, and you've got yourself a fantastic farmer and still one of the best rogue builds out there. Heartseeker is overall just great this season, so treat yourself to some fun. For our next build, we have yet another fan favorite, the Death Trapper. This is a build that's been a top contender for a long-ass time at this point. Not only for pit pushing, but it's also one of the fastest speed farmers in the game. It does require you to hit quite a few breakpoints, but once you've got that sorted, you can play the build as a one-button build. And that's due to the Scoundrel's Leathers. Using this, your trap skills are now core skills. This in turn allows you to utilize the Beastfall boots to drain your energy, which, when paired with preparation, removes the cooldown of your death trap if all the requirements and breakpoints are met. And of course, at the same time, it's also resetting the cooldown of your dash, so you can zip-zappity zoom through content faster than any other build. Be aware though, you need to read a guide before playing this build, because if you don't meet the requirements, then the build is absolute ass. And while I do understand most of my viewers can't read, I'm sure you can find a video tutorial out there. Alright, for the next class, the 5th worst class, we have the shit-smearing Barbarian. And you'll be glad to hear that the top 2 builds of this class are some of the most fun builds in the game as well. And starting us off, it's Hota. Yeah, that's right. Hota is back, and it's back at the top once again. And while the pushing variant may look a tad clunky with a bunch of skills and shit going on, don't worry. You can absolutely play this build as a one-button build as well, which should be right up your alley. Okay, so why is the build so unbelievably strong now? One word, Fury. Okay, perhaps 2 words, Maximum Fury. Now, a quick history lesson. Back in the good old days, Hota used to scale with Maximum Fury. Hota was the best build in the game, and all was good in the world, but then came the big bad wolf, and removed this Fury scaling. It made Hota sad. So sad, in fact, that he went into a supportive role for months on end. But now, Fury scaling is back again, and holy shit are there lots of interactions we can abuse to maximize this interaction. Because not only does Hota scale via Max Fury now, but so does Ramaladni's Magnum Opus. But we have never been able to use this double interaction before, because this weapon required you to use a one-hander, which Hota could not utilize. But now, it's finally possible. So what we do to scale this is simple. We grab Max Fury, everywhere. Then, we do double it and give it to the next person by grabbing Melted Heart of Selig. And then, once you've sanctified like 5,000 items, we double it yet again by sanctifying Selig. This is the reason Hota is at the top this season. There are just so many ways in getting that max fury stacked up. Just be aware of one thing though before hopping on this build. The fact that the top builds are rocking 2 Melted Heart of Seligs makes the build immortal. So if you copy-paste some of these builds and don't have these, you're gonna fucking die. So make sure you find yourself a good build guide, like the ones on MOBA or Maxroll. For the next build, we have a build that is pretty similar to Hota in power, and that is Lunging Strike. It's a build that's been at the top for a long time now, ever since the introduction of the hooves of the Mountain God Sneakers. It's an overall extremely strong build that's great at everything. It's fast, it's easy to get online, it pushes higher than Hota until you've got the sanctifications going, and of course, it's fun as hell. Okay, and how does it work? Simple. Pretty much the same as Hota. You scale max fury and combine this with the magnum opus and the adaptability aspect, throw on the Mountain Hooves sneakers to have your lunging strike deal AoE damage, and you succeed. If you've played this build in the past, then sure, it may be getting old as it's been strong for this long, but if you haven't, then this is a must-play. Holding down the lunging strike button and teleporting all over the place is just too satisfying. Heading off to the 6th shittiest class in the game, and yes, my glass is always half empty, we have the Soyborn. And the strongest build of the season is one I haven't seen in a long time, the Harambe Payback build. And let's start with something positive here. This is hands down one of the most fun builds I've played. It was my favorite Soyborn build during Season 6, but it was always overshadowed by the core skills like Quill Volley or Rake. This, however, has now changed. And unless you skipped the entire Barb section, you may understand why. Yes, that's right. It's due to maximum resource stacking. Because the Spiritborn has this lovely unique called Rod of Kepaliki. It spends your resource and increases your damage while doing so. And by scaling enough resources, all skills that can use this weapon are suddenly pretty damn strong. But Payback does this better than the other skills, because Payback in itself also drains all resources to increase its damage, and combine that with the fact that Rod of Kepaleki also turns your core skills into basic skills, and we can use adaptability aspect on top of that. So just by stacking a bit of max vigor, we're getting a 100x multiplier or some ridiculous shit like that. That's pretty bonkers. Oh, and by the way, we're also able to overpower constantly by grabbing the Pock and Zan rune combo, so we're getting that too from spending a bunch of resources. Combine that with the buffs to Harambe skills from previous seasons, a reworked ultimate, a new pair of gloves, granting you 11 gorilla skill ranks, and some additional buffs, and you have yourself one of the best builds in the game. And honestly, I can't recommend this build enough. It's fun, fast, and satisfying to play. And if you don't want to play this, then perhaps this next one may be of interest. It's the Evade Spiritborn back yet again. Because sure, you can play Evade on a Paladin now, but hell, it's pretty great on a Spiritborn as well. It's also the build you want in your armory if you're playing any other Spiritborn build, as this is the ultimate speed farmer. You're simply evading around, and you have your main Spirit Hall, the Eagle, shooting out aimbotting feathers for you. But in case you played this build last league, not much has changed other than the build being weaker now that we can't abuse all of the overpowered uniques. But either way, if I was playing Spiritborn this season, I'd play Payback for pushing and Evade for farming. Alright, and for the final class of the day, the 7th shittiest one, aka the best one, the Paladin. This class is just miles ahead of all the other classes, but since it didn't receive any nerfs before the tower launched, don't expect it to get nerfed until next season. And for the best of the best builds in the entire game, we have Roxy and Hysteria's Judgement setup, capable of clearing into the pit 140s, dealing quadrillions of damage. And that's without being tied down, and force-fed a metric ton of prankster runs, by the way, making it all the more impressive.
But the best for Greta.
Okay, so how does this beyond busted build function Well, you have the usual Paladin interactions, of course. You scale armor, you abuse the castle node, and you have a few hundreds of billions of damage. That's the first step. Then, as the second step, we create an actual build. And what this one does is rely entirely on Judgement. This is a sub-skill, meaning it functions as a skill in itself, but you'll have to apply it via your other skills. And apply it we do via our Spear of the Heavens and our Arbiter form. Judgement will be up for 3 seconds, but we're able to detonate it early by utilizing the Judicator Oath and a core skill, in this case, Blessed Hammer. And once we've detonated Judgement, it's spread to nearby enemies via Judgment Day. Then, we apply it again, we detonate, we spread, and we repeat. At this point, we already have ourselves one hell of a build. But we need more damage. Fortunate for us, the aspects are kind of broken for Judgement, and the same goes for the unique ring, Seal of the Second Trumpet, a 3.5x multiplier and a chance to explode twice? Yeah, sure, I'll take that. Other than the Judgement interactions, the other skills are used either for utility or boosting our damage. Now it must be said that this build is clunky as fuck for anything outside pushing. But if you want to do any sort of serious pushing this season, then this is the build you need to play, and use the armory for when you need to speed farm. Heading off to the second strongest build of the season, I had a minor issue. The issue being that everyone, including their fucking grandmother, is playing the same build. So I had to scroll through like 50 pages of Judgement builds to find literally anything else. And scrolling down to around pit 130s or so, I found this beauty. A Paladin with a big-ass sword. And not just any sword, an orange Zenith sword. Now I do believe there are other builds that should clear higher than this that are not Judgement-based, but since no one's playing them, it is what it is. And I'm not really complaining because this build is cool as fuck. So cool, in fact, that I've covered this build not only once, but twice on the channel, together with Lord Exara. Alright, and how does the build function? There are quite a few cool and fun interactions taking place here, actually. For starters, Zenith is an ultimate skill with a long-ass cooldown. We can solve this, though, by using Sermon of Steel. With this, we get 4 seconds of free casting, and we are able to extend this duration by attacking quickly. With proper gear, you're able to keep it up indefinitely, and with suboptimal gear, you can just use the Resplendence glyph and reset the cooldown back to 0. And just as you'll have it, we are already interested in scaling a shit ton of attack speed, because attack speed scales the Zenith damage. It scales the Oath. It scales our Paragons, and just our overall damage since we're attacking faster. Combine that with the fact that Zenith has 5 times the base damage of other skills simply because it's an ultimate, along with a lot of insanely strong Zealot aspects, and you have yourself a fantastic build, and an extremely underrated one apparently. Alright with that, we're done with this shit. Make sure to drop a sub, check out the builds, and the new Diablo Immortal update in the description, and I'll see you in the next one.